The snow that fell during the night had covered the small Russian village of Novaya Niva in the Belgorod region with a silent white blanket. Dimitri Petrov, a 28-year-old Ukrainian soldier, lay unconscious on the snow. Blood from his left shoulder had stained the white snow red, and the Ukrainian badge on his uniform gleamed in the moonlight. He had been running for hours, but now he had no strength left to run. Where are you watching this story from today? Perhaps from the comfort of your warm home, maybe in a cafe, or on your way to work. Wherever you are, I'm sure you've never seen the real face of war this closely. The story I'm about to tell you today will show how even enmities can melt in the face of humanity. Dimitri's story will challenge all prejudices and perhaps change your perspective on war. Dimitri Petrov was born in the small town of Irpin, outside Kiev. His father Viktor was a teacher, his mother Oksana was a nurse. Before the war began, Dimitri was a computer engineer working for a small technology company. He had dreams to immigrate to Canada, build a new life there, maybe get married and have children. He was an ordinary young man who didn't care much about politics, focused only on his work and family. The morning of February 24th, 2022, everything changed. When Russian tanks crossed the border, Dimitri's world was turned upside down. Their house was bombed, his mother was injured in the hospital, and his father disappeared while trying to escape from the city. Dimitri had two choices, run or fight. He chose to fight. He had no military training, only basic weapon knowledge his grandfather had taught him in childhood. But his love for his homeland and desire to protect his family made up for all his shortcomings. For 6 months, he fought on the Donetsk front. He lost friends, came face to face with death, but never gave up. On a cold evening in November, Dimitri's unit was surrounded by Russian forces. The plan was simple. They would cross the border under cover of darkness and reach the Ukrainian-controlled area. But plans never work in real life. They were ambushed. Dimitri watched his comrades get shot one by one. His commander whispered to him with his last breath, "Run, Dimitri, tell our story." At that moment, Dimitri realized that his survival was important not only for himself, but also for his dead friends. For 3 days, he ran through the forests. His food ran out, his water was depleted. The blood flowing from his wound was gradually weakening him. On the 4th day, when he could no longer walk, he saw the lights of a village in the distance. At that moment, he didn't know that this village was on Russian soil and that the most difficult test of his life would begin here. At 6 o'clock in the morning, the village headman Boris Volkov noticed something in the snow in front of his house. When he approached, the sight he saw shocked him. A wounded soldier wearing a Ukrainian uniform was lying unconscious in the snow. Boris's first thought was to warn the villagers. "There's an enemy," he shouted. "There's a Ukrainian soldier." The villagers quickly gathered. Old Sergei Petrov, coincidentally the same surname as Dimitri, Maria Volkov, who had lost her son in the war, and young but harsh Alexei Romanov. They all looked at Dimitri with anger. "Let's lynch this monster," Alexei shouted. "We will show no mercy to these killers who murdered our children." Maria held a stick in her hand. There was hatred in her eyes. "It's people like him who killed my son," she sobbed. "Now it's our turn." But old Boris was the wisest of the group. "Wait," he said. "This man is about to die. Let's first think about what we want to do." Dimitri regained consciousness when he heard the villagers' voices. When he opened his eyes, he saw 5 Russian villagers looking at him. With a feeling mixed with fear and pain, he tried to get up, but he was too weak. "Please," he said in Russian. His voice barely came out. "Water. Just water." Boris was surprised that Dimitri could speak Russian. Most Ukrainian soldiers only knew Ukrainian. "You speak Russian?" he asked. My mother is Russian," Dimitri whispered. I just want to go home." These sentences created a silence among the villagers. The person they thought was an enemy was speaking their language and even carried Russian blood. Maria lowered her stick. Does he have a Russian mother? She asked in surprise. Boris made a difficult decision. I'll take him to my house. I won't let him die. But if he tries to escape, we'll kill him. Boris's house was a small wooden house in the center of the village. His wife Anna was a former nurse and began tending to Dimitri's wounds. At first she was very worried, but professional ethics prevailed. This boy is about to die, she told her husband. He could get an infection in 2 days. Dimitri was delirious with high fever. Oksana, mother, I'm sorry, he murmured. I couldn't protect you. When Anna heard these names, she was moved. His mother's name is Oksana, she told Boris, just like our neighbor. For the first 3 days, Dimitri fought for his life. Anna never left his bedside day and night, trying to bring down his fever. Boris, meanwhile, was busy calming the villagers' reactions. Alexei came every day and asked, "Why are you feeding this killer?" Maria also expressed her concerns. What if he escapes? What if he kills us? But Boris was patient. He's just a child, no different from our children. On the 4th day, Dimitri's fever broke, and he opened his eyes. Around him he saw Boris and Anna. His first thought was to escape, but he was too weak. "Where am I?" he asked in a weak voice. "In the village of Novaya Niva," said Boris, "on Russian soil." Dimitri's face turned pale. He knew he was on Russian soil, but he hadn't realized he was this deep. Why are you helping me?" Anna gave him water. "Because you're someone's son too," she said in a soft tone. This sentence brought tears to Dimitri's eyes. For the first time in months, he felt someone treating him humanely. My mother is also Russian," he said. "She comes from Voronezh." Boris was surprised. "Voronezh? That's only 200 kilometers from here." "Yes," said Dimitri. "My mother and father met at university." Borders didn't matter then. People loved each other and got married. In the following days, as Dimitri began to recover, Boris and Anna began having long conversations with him. Dimitri told them about his pre-war life, that he was a computer engineer, that he loved listening to music, that he wanted to have a dog. "What did you do before the war started?" Anna asked. "I developed mobile applications," said Dimitri. "Educational games for children. Isn't it ironic? I was making software to educate children, and now I'm accused of killing them." Boris also shared his own story. He told about living in the Soviet Union in his youth, having Ukrainian friends, and even periods when he worked in Kiev. "Back then we were all citizens of the same country," said Boris. "Ukrainian, Russian, Kazakh, it didn't matter. We considered each other brothers." Dimitri thought about Boris's words. "Do you miss those times too?" "Of course," said Anna, "but now everything has changed. Television constantly says you're bad." These conversations began to spread from mouth to mouth. As the villagers learned how ordinary a person Dimitri actually was, their attitude towards him began to change. But not everyone agreed. Alexei was still very angry. "This man is a soldier, he killed our soldiers." But old Sergei Petrov was beginning to think differently. "I fought too," he said, "in Afghanistan. The children there were like our children. War doesn't make anyone bad, it makes them bad." Maria was still suffering from losing her son, but as she listened to Dimitri, she realized that he was experiencing the same pain. "This child misses his mother too," she said to herself, "just like my son." In the second week of Dimitri's stay in the village, an unexpected event occurred. The village's only doctor, old Ivan Petrov, again coincidentally the same surname, had a heart attack. The nearest hospital was 50 kilometers away, and the roads were closed due to a snowstorm. Anna panicked. "What are we going to do? Ivan will die." Dimitri heard these conversations and got out of bed. "I can help," he said. Boris was surprised. "Are you a doctor?" "No, but my mother is a nurse. She taught me basic first aid. I also learned some things in military training." Anna hesitated. This required trusting an enemy soldier. But Ivan's condition was serious. "Let's see what you can do," she said. Life-saving. Dimitri checked Ivan's pulse, listened to his breathing, and assessed his condition. "This is a mild heart attack," he said, "but it needs immediate intervention." Using Anna's medical supplies, Dimitri tried to stabilize Ivan. He regulated his pulse, opened his breathing, and kept him in the correct position. "Do you have aspirin?" he asked Anna. Yes, but how much should I give?" "1 full tablet. It will open the heart vessels." After 3 hours of intensive effort, Ivan's condition stabilized. His pulse returned to normal and his breathing became easier. Boris was amazed watching what Dimitri did. You saved his life." Dimitri was tired but happy. He's also someone's father, someone's grandfather. "I just did what was right." Saving Ivan's life completely changed the villagers' view of Dimitri. Now he was no longer just the enemy soldier, but a person who saved lives. Sergei Petrov came and shook Dimitri's hand. "Thank you, son." "Ivan is my oldest friend." Maria approached Dimitri with tears in her eyes. I apologize to you. You're not a bad person." The most surprising change was in Alexei. That evening he came to Dimitri and said, "I saw what you did. Maybe I was wrong." As Dimitri recovered, he began having deeper conversations with the villagers. He learned that they too had losses, that they suffered. Sergei's son had died in Afghanistan. Maria's son had been martyred in this war. Alexei's brother had been wounded. "We're all experiencing the same pain," Dimitri said one evening. "We all lost loved ones, so why do we continue to kill each other?" Boris thought about this question. Because we were told so. Television, newspapers, internet, always the same thing. They are bad, we are good. "But that's not the truth," said Anna. "The truth is, we all want the same thing. Peace, family, happiness." Dimitri told the villagers about the real face of war, how his friends died, how they lived in fear, his longing to reunite with his family. "People think we're heroes," he said, "but the truth is we're just scared children who just want to go home. Nobody wants to fight. We're just forced to." Alexei asked, "Then why do you fight? Couldn't you surrender?" "Because we have to protect our home, our family," said Dimitri. "If you were in our place, you would do the same." This sentence raised many questions in the villagers' minds. Indeed, if their country was invaded, would they also resist? After Dimitri recovered, he had planned to escape. But the bond he formed with the villagers caused him to change his plans. "I have to go," he told Boris, "but I don't want to leave here." "You've become part of our family too," said Anna. "But we know you have a family too." Dimitri took out his phone and showed his mother's photo. "This is my mother, Oksana. She's in a refugee camp now, waiting for me to return." Boris looked at the photo. "She looks like our Anna too, same beautiful smile." "Maybe when the war is over," said Dimitri hopefully, "my mother can come here. She can meet you." As the time for Dimitri to leave the village approached, the villagers had made an important decision. They would help him. "We'll take you to the Ukrainian border," said Boris. "Safely." Alexei, now completely changed, said, "I'm coming too. This war has to end." Maria gave Dimitri a package. "For your mother. It contains food and medicine." On Dimitri's last night in the village, the villagers organized a small farewell party for him. Ivan had recovered and was on his feet. "You gave me a second life," he told Dimitri. "I don't know how to thank you." "You also gave us a second chance," said Dimitri. "You made us remember our humanity." That night they all sat and talked together, about the future, about peace, about post-war dreams. "Will you come back here when the war is over?" Anna asked. "Definitely," said Dimitri. "You are my second family now." Early the next morning, Boris, Alexei, and Sergei took Dimitri in their car and set off for the Ukrainian border. The journey took 4 hours and passed in silence. As they approached the border, Dimitri became tense. "What if we get caught?" "We won't get caught," said Boris. "I've known these roads since childhood." They stopped 2 kilometers from the border. Dimitri would get out and walk the remaining distance. As he got out of the car, Dimitri hugged each one tightly. "I will never forget you," he said with tears in his eyes. Boris gave him a paper, our address. "Write to us when the war is over," Alexei said. "You changed us. We don't believe anything on television anymore." Sergei, with the wisdom of an old man, said, "War will end, son." But friendships never end. Dimitri walked the last 2 kilometers. With every step, he thought about the people he left behind. They were supposed to be enemies, but they had become his closest friends. At the checkpoint on the Ukrainian border, he explained his situation to the soldiers. At first, they didn't believe. A Ukrainian soldier who had stayed in a Russian village and come out alive was a hard story to believe. But what Dimitri told was too detailed and sincere. Also, he had gifts from Russian villagers with him. Dimitri reunited with his mother Oksana in the refugee camp. The embrace between them made them forget all the pain of war in an instant. "My son, I thought I lost you," Oksana cried. "Mother, I have so much to tell you," said Dimitri. "I stayed in a Russian village and found a second family there." Oksana was surprised. "In a Russian village? Didn't they try to kill you?" "At first, yes, but then everything changed." Dimitri's story spread rapidly within the camp. People initially found it hard to believe, but Dimitri's sincerity and details were convincing. A journalist heard the story and wanted to interview Dimitri. Dimitri hesitated at first, but then decided this story needed to be heard. When the interview was published, it made a big impact. People were seeing the other side of war, understanding that people who were supposed to be enemies were experiencing the same pain. Meanwhile, changes were also taking place in the village of Novaya Niva. As Dimitri's story was told among the villagers, their perspective on war was changing. Boris told other residents of the village about Dimitri's story. He wasn't our enemy. He was just a child who wanted to go home. Anna told her neighbors, Ukrainians are also human like us. They also have mothers, fathers, children. Dimitri told his mother about his experiences in the village in detail. "Mother, if the war ends, can we go to that village and visit them?" Oksana saw the light in her son's eyes. "Of course, son. They saved your life. They are part of our family now." Dimitri took out the address Boris had given him and began writing a letter. "Dear Boris, Anna, and all villagers, I safely reached Ukraine. I reunited with my mother and told her about you. She is very curious about you and wants to meet you. When the war ends, I will definitely come. This time not as an enemy, but as a son." 2 weeks later, Dimitri unexpectedly received a reply. Boris had also written to him, "Dear Dimitri, your letter made the whole village happy. Ivan has completely recovered and talks about you all the time. Alexei has become a different person now, openly expressing his anti-war views. Thanks to you, we realize that our enemies are actually people like us. We look forward to you visiting us with your mother when this conflict finds resolution. This village is now your home too." Stories from both sides began to change people's perspective on war. Dimitri's story was shared on social media, and the villagers' change was also covered in local press. People began to see that war had not only political, but also human dimensions. They understood that people seen as enemies were also individuals with loves, longings, and fears like themselves. 6 months later, when conflicts in the region temporarily calmed, Dimitri took courage and went to the area near the Russian border again. This time not to fight, but to visit his friends. He explained his situation to the Russian soldiers he encountered at the border. They had also heard the story and allowed Dimitri to pass. When he arrived in the village of Novaya Niva, the villagers welcomed him like heroes. Boris hugged him tearfully, and Anna's prepared food filled the table. "You came back," said Alexei joyfully. "You really came back." That evening, a small celebration was held in the village square. Russian and Ukrainian songs were sung, food was shared. Dimitri sang a Ukrainian folk song he learned from his mother, and the villagers sang Russian folk songs. "This is how it should have been," said old Sergei. "We are brothers. Borders cannot separate us." Ivan, while thanking Dimitri, said, "You didn't just save my life, you saved all of our humanity." That night, Dimitri discussed future plans with the villagers. When conflicts end, he wanted to return here and establish a technology center. "We can open a software company here," he said excitedly. "Both Russian and Ukrainian young people can work. We can produce projects together." Boris liked this idea very much. Our village would stop being an aging village and become a young village. Anna added, "Maybe your mother will also come to live here. Taking care of her would be an honor for us." Dimitri's second visit was also widely covered in the media. This time it wasn't just an individual story, but a concrete example of how peace might be possible. People from both countries were affected by this story. The hashtag "peace is possible" became trending on social media. People began sharing their own similar experiences. The story spread to neighboring villages. People began to question their prejudices against Ukrainians. Some neighboring villages invited Dimitri. He went and told his story. Each time he saw the same change in people's eyes, from anger to understanding, from hatred to compassion. This story found resonance among fighting soldiers as well. Both Russian and Ukrainian soldiers heard Dimitri's story. In some frontline areas, cases began where soldiers made human contact with each other. Soldiers who chatted during ceasefires, shared photos, talked about their families. Of course, these situations weren't welcomed by commanders, but humanity was stronger than war. One of the most touching moments was when Dimitri's mother, Oksana, started communicating through letters with Maria, the Russian mother who lost her son. Oksana wrote, "Dear Maria, I could have lost my son too. I understand your pain. No mother should lose her child in war." Maria replied, "Dear Oksana, your son is like my son. He gave me hope. Maybe we can bring peace." These human connections began to create pressure on political leaders as well. People no longer wanted war to continue and expressed this openly. Dimitri's story was also cited as an example in peace negotiations. The question was asked, if even enemy soldiers can make peace, why can't leaders? As our story comes to an end, we see Dimitri back in the refugee camp, but now with a different light in his eyes. He has seen that even in the darkest moments of war, humanity can prevail. He shares his experience with other soldiers in the refugee camp. They are not our enemy. They also want this war to end like us. Some soldiers initially received these words with suspicion, but Dimitri's sincerity first melted the doubts, then the prejudices. When Dimitri shares his story with the world, he says these words, "War tried to make us enemies, but humanity made us brothers. Boris, Anna, Alexei, Sergei, Maria, they are not my enemies, they are my family. If I, a wounded and helpless Ukrainian soldier, could change their hearts, if they could break down my prejudices, then peace is not just a dream, but a possibility." This story shows that even in war, people can choose humanity over hatred. It shows that understanding and empathy are stronger than any weapon. The borders drawn on maps cannot separate the connections drawn in hearts. And perhaps one day, when all conflicts end, stories like Dimitri's will be remembered as the first steps toward lasting peace. As the camera pulls back from the refugee camp, we see thousands of other people, each with their own story, their own hopes for peace. The snow continues to fall, covering everything with the same white blanket, just like the hope that one day covers all differences with understanding. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and become part of our Everyday Life Stories community. Where are you watching from? Drop a comment below. We love hearing from our amazing viewers around the world.